You have tried to change before. You know this feeling. The first few days go well, then something interrupts the routine, then something else does, then you stop, and then somehow you end up back at square one, wondering what is wrong with you. But the real answer is far stranger. Because the problem is almost never what you think it is. It is not a lack of willpower. It is not that you are lazy. It is not even that your goal was wrong. Research suggests that most people who fail to build lasting habits are missing something far more specific and far more fixable than any of those things. They are missing a system, not a plan, not a motivation boost, a system. And that system, according to a 2025 study published in Behavioral Sciences, has exactly 3 parts. Here's the open question this research set out to answer. We already know that people differ dramatically in their ability to make changes that last. Some people set a goal and reach it and keep it. Others try and cannot seem to hold on. What actually separates those two groups? Is it personality? Intelligence? Circumstance? For decades, the best answer psychology had was something called the growth mindset, the belief that your abilities are not fixed, that you can improve. And that belief is real and it matters. But researchers Bobinet, Burnette, Becker, and Rowell noticed a problem. Knowing that you can change tells you almost nothing about how to actually do it. It's like knowing a destination exists, but having no map and no vehicle and no fuel. The belief alone is not enough. So they built something more complete. They called it an iterative mindset. And they designed 2 studies with a combined sample of over 1,200 adults to test whether it was real, whether it was distinct from anything psychology already measured, and whether it actually predicted real-world outcomes like lasting behavior change and overall well-being. Here is what the iterative mindset actually is. It is not a single belief. It is a 3-part structure. Each part does something specific. Each part is necessary. Remove any one of them and the system breaks down. The first part is called practice. Practice in this framework is not about trying hard. It is about something much more precise, repetition until a behavior becomes automatic. The researchers define it as putting a strategy into action and repeating it consistently until the brain no longer needs to make a conscious decision to do it. The goal is not effort. The goal is effortlessness. Think about how you brush your teeth. You do not motivate yourself to do it. You do not remind yourself why it matters. You just do it. It has become a reflex. That is exactly what this framework is pointing at. Every behavior you want to keep in your life eventually needs to reach that same state, where it runs without you having to push it. Until it gets there, it's fragile. It depends on your mood, your energy, your schedule, your willpower on a given Tuesday morning, and all of those things are unreliable. Automaticity is not. This is why the research treats practice not as one tool among many, but as a structural requirement. You are not done with a new behavior when you've done it a few times. You are done when you no longer have to think about it. The second part is called iterate. This is the part most self-improvement advice skips entirely. Iterate means that when your current strategy stops working, when an obstacle appears, when life changes, when the approach that worked last month does not work this month, you do not give up. You adjust. You find a new approach. You try that. Then you refine again. The researchers define this as a belief that continuously refining and adjusting your strategies is not a sign of weakness or inconsistency. It is the actual mechanism of lasting change. Most people unconsciously treat a strategy as a contract. If the strategy fails, the goal fails. If Monday's plan gets disrupted, the whole week is lost. But the research suggests that the people who succeed long-term carry a completely different assumption. They expect to adjust. They build adjustment into the process itself. When the gym closes, they walk. When walking stops working, they try something else. They are not loyal to the method, they are loyal to the direction. This is what iterate means, staying committed to the destination while holding the route loosely. The third part is called assess. This is the most unusual one, and in the data, it turned out to be the most powerful of the three. Assess means evaluating your failures without judgment, without shame, without self-blame. The researchers describe it as responding to setbacks with neutrality, treating a failure not as evidence that something is wrong with you, but as data about what needs to change in your approach. They connect this directly to a brain structure most people have never heard of, the habulina. The habulina is a small region deep in the brain that monitors for disappointment and frustration. When it detects those signals, and shame is one of the strongest of them, it sends an inhibitory signal to the brain's motivation and reward circuits. In plain language, it turns off your drive to keep going. This is not a metaphor, it is a physiological event. Your brain, when flooded with shame after a failure, does not just feel bad, it actively suppresses the neural systems that generate the motivation to try again. Which means that every time you beat yourself up after falling short of a goal, you are not just suffering emotionally, you are making it neurologically harder to start again. The iterative mindset of the iterative mind is designed specifically to interrupt that loop. Not by pretending the failure did not happen, not by lowering your standards, but by looking at what happened with the cool, curious eyes of someone trying to understand a problem, and then moving on without the emotional weight that would otherwise slow everything down. Now here's what the data found when these three components were measured and tested. In Study 1, across 871 adults, the researchers confirmed that these three factors are real, statistically distinct from each other, from existing measures of personality like the Big Five, and from other mindset constructs, including the well-known growth mindset. The iterative mindset is measuring something genuinely new. They also found that people with stronger scores on this measure were significantly more likely to be in the group that had successfully lost weight and kept it off, as opposed to those who had tried and struggled or relapsed. For every 1 unit increase in the overall score, the odds of being in the success group increased by 1.41. In Study 2, 3 weeks later with a separate sample of 345 adults, the findings held and sharpened. The odds ratio for success climbed to 1.87. And when the researchers looked at which of the three components was doing the most work in predicting who succeeded, the answer was assess. Not practice, not iterate, assess. The ability to experience a setback without turning it into a verdict about your worth as a person was the single strongest predictor of long-term behavioral success across both studies. And the effects did not stop at goal achievement. The same study found that stronger iterative mindsets were associated with meaningfully higher levels of general self-confidence. The belief in your ability to handle what life throws at you, with a correlation of 0.64. They were also associated with substantially higher overall well-being, including lower stress and lower burnout, with a correlation of 0.68. Statistical analyses confirmed that the self-confidence finding helps explain the well-being finding. People with iterative mindsets appear to feel more capable, and feeling more capable appears to make life feel better overall. Crucially, these effects held even after the researchers controlled for personality traits like neuroticism and for existing constructs like grit and learning orientation. The iterative mindset was doing something above and beyond all of those. Before going further, one important note about what this research can and cannot tell you. Both studies were correlational, That means the researchers measured the iterative mindset and then measured outcomes. They did not train people to have this mindset and then watch what happened. So the data shows a strong association, not a confirmed cause. People with higher iterative mindset scores tend to do better. Whether deliberately building this mindset causes that improvement is a question the research raises but cannot yet fully answer. What it can say is that this cluster of beliefs, iterate, practice, assess, travels consistently with better outcomes across multiple measures and 2 independent samples. So what does this look like in your actual life? Think about the last time you tried to build a habit and it did not stick. Maybe it was exercise, maybe it was diet, maybe it was sleep, or reading, or some version of a daily routine. When it fell apart, what happened next? For most people, there is a brief and painful moment of assessment, and that assessment almost always ends in some version of the same conclusion, that the failure says something about them, that they are the kind of person who cannot follow through, that trying again will probably end the same way. That feeling is not just discouraging. According to this research, it is neurologically suppressive. It is your habenula doing exactly what it was built to do, registering disappointment and throttling the motivation systems that would otherwise push you back into the attempt. And the longer you stay in that state, the harder the restart becomes. The 3-part framework offers a different path out. When something you are trying to build stops working, the iterative mindset asks you to do 3 things in sequence. First, look at the failure without judgment, just as information. What specifically broke down? The timing, the difficulty level, the environment, the trigger that was supposed to start the behavior? Second, adjust. Change exactly that thing, not everything. Not the goal, just the strategy element that failed. Third, practice the adjusted version consistently enough that it starts to run on its own, without you having to consciously decide to do it every time. Then, when the next obstacle arrives, and it will, repeat the cycle. This is not a one-time fix, it's a loop. And that's the point. The word iterative literally means repeating a process with the aim of approaching a desired result, not arriving, approaching. Every adjustment brings you closer. Every honest assessment without self-blame keeps the loop open. Every round of practice reduces how much mental energy the behavior costs you. Over time, what required enormous effort starts to require almost none. The research also offers something quieter. The possibility that this approach is not just useful for reaching goals, it may simply be a better way to live. The same qualities that help you stick to a habit, adjusting without catastrophizing, practicing without demanding perfection, assessing failure without turning it into shame, are the same qualities associated with feeling more capable, less burned out, and more satisfied overall. The study did not find this connection in one domain and not others. It found it broadly, across multiple measures of well-being, consistently across both studies, which suggests that an iterative mindset is not just a productivity tool, it is a way of relating to your own imperfection that turns out to have consequences well beyond any single goal you might be working toward. The last time you tried something and stopped, that was not the end of the story. The research suggests it was just a moment in a loop that never had to close. The question the iterative mindset asks is not whether you failed, it asks what you are going to adjust.